EA is now on Twitch. Join us Wednesday nights when Alistair reads a bedtime story, and Sunday mornings for a few hours of chill, casual gaming. Plus interviews, special guests, pickup streams, and more. Visit twitch.tv/EA Podcasts and follow us to get notified when we go live. Plus, you can access VODs of past broadcasts. You can support us there as well with monthly subscriptions, or if you're an Amazon Prime member, you can give us $5 a month for free. Visit escapeartists.net/Twitch for all the details.
Escape Pod, episode 948. Thank you for doing business with the Xyb'lor Principality, by Rachel Merisman.
Welcome to Escape Pod, the weekly science fiction podcast. I'm Alistair, your host, and this week's story is Thank You for Doing Business with the Xyb'lor Principality by Rachel Merisman. Rachel is a speculative fiction author living in the San Francisco Bay Area. Her short fiction has appeared in Beneath Ceaseless Skies and Fusion Fragment. You can find her online at rachelmerisman.com. Your narrator this week is Isaac Harwood. Scientist by day, the evenings and weekends are for family, but Isaac still finds the time for plenty of tabletop RPGs and other such nerdy nonsense. Stories have always been a strong passion of Isaac's, and bringing them to life with writing and voice acting is his privilege and honor. And I know just how he feels. So, get ready, count the exits, and put your best smile on while you wait for the countdown to finish, because it's story time.
Thank You for Doing Business with the Xyb'lor Principality by Rachel Merisman, read by Isaac Harwood. Jackson was not a connoisseur of art, but he could identify a work's salient features. And the salient features of these particular works were that they were valuable, lacking any obvious security system, and right there. "Don't even think about it," Penn's voice said pleasantly in his ear. "I think the figurine on the left is solid Karenite," Jackson murmured into his comm, low enough not to trigger the translation device on the table. "You can't steal it," Penn said. "You never want me to steal anything," Jackson said. "It really puts a damper on our relationship." "True," Penn replied. "But stealing from the Xyb'lor would be suicidal, which is why no one will think to look for us here." Across from Jackson, Curator Third Rank Diglitz held out a swirling black sphere aloft in one dainty tendril. The Xyb'lor tilted the piece from side to side in front of what Jackson presumed were its visual receptors, its cilia fluttering gently. 4 other spheres rested, inert, in a case on the table, along with the circuit sculpture that was the official reason Jackson was there. Diglitz made a sound like an obscene tea kettle. "These are fine specimens of constellation spheres from the 7th hegemony," the translation device intoned. "But 5 is too many to exchange for a Srakeel sculpture, even an early one." "Is it?" asked Jackson innocently. Penn was correct that it would be incredibly foolish to steal from the Xyb'lor, but that didn't mean there weren't angles to be worked. For example, an enterprising person could, hypothetically, convince their employer that the Xyb'lor would consider an early Srakeel circuit sculpture to be worth 5 7th hegemony constellation spheres. Then, when the Xyb'lor, with their love of art and famously militant sense of fairness, insisted that it was only worth 4, said enterprising person could pocket a sphere for themselves. Jackson already had a buyer lined up. "Yes," Diglitz said. "It's worth exactly 4.2 of them." "Wait, what?" 4.2, Diglitz repeated. "But of course we can't just cut off 80% of one. That would be ridiculous." Its cilia trembled in what Jackson assumed was its version of laughter. He forced out an awkward chuckle. "But we can offer something of equivalent value. Now let me see." Diglitz returned the sphere to the case and sucked the tendril back into its torso with a small pop. "A pre-cataclysm etching from Thule. or perhaps a diptych by our own painter Xyb'lor. We also recently acquired a lovely sculpture representing the ascension of innocent R.A. to the final plane. Pen? Jackson whispered. Working on prices, Pen said. How do you spell Xyb'lor? Those are all interesting options, Jackson stalled. It's hard to choose just from the descriptions, isn't it? Idiglet said. If you'd like, I can bring them here for you to examine yourself. Pen! Jackson hissed a minute later. It just left me alone in here, with the holospheres and the circuit sculpture and everything on the walls. There was no response. Pen? We've got a problem. Jackson jerked his hand back from the Charonite figurine. What problem? Lowry's ship just came through the system gate. But he's not supposed to look for us here, Jackson exclaimed, figurine forgotten. The translation device gurgled. Are you sure it's him? Unless there's somebody else with a Category 3 cruiser and appalling taste in ship colours, Pen said. Jackson opened the door and stuck his head out. A dozen identical doors lined the hallway, leading to a dozen identical rooms and a dozen Xyb'lor curators dedicated to feeding the Principality's insatiable hunger for ever more and novel art. There was no sign of curator third-rank Idiglets. Self-preservation battled profit within Jackson and won. Meet me at the docks in 5, he told Pen. I can't, Pen said. Why not? Jackson's mind filled with images of Lowry's ship already locked onto their own, explosion and death imminent. There's a bunch of ships ahead of me in the queue, Pen said. They were very clear about staying in order. Pen, this is the Xyb'lor, Jackson. I've seen less strict queues at military stations. You need to get out of there, Jackson said, and you can either retrieve me from the docks first or abandon me to the Xyb'lor, who will probably decide that the fair thing to do is to turn me over to Lowry. Pen was silent. Penelope! Fine! Jackson gave the holospheres a final, mournful look, then grabbed the circuit sculpture and took off down the hallway. He careened around the corner and barely avoided crashing into 2 reptilian creatures carrying a carved stone column, then dodged around a Xyb'lor holding a stack of pale grey bowls. Sorry, excuse me, sorry, Pen was chanting in his ear. Pen, which berth? Jackson shouted. He darted between a Xyb'lor looped round and round with golden rope and a blue humanoid weighed down by an enormous blown glass sculpture. Sorry, number 23, hey, watch it, sorry! Another turn brought Jackson to the main doors of the facility and into a veritable gallery of ambulatory fine art. The various Xyb'lor and other art-carrying individuals in the vast atrium stared as Jackson sprinted past them, looking like what he so often was, but at this moment wasn't. A thief. Keep the change! He shouted. Pen already had the airlock open as she slid their ship into berth 23, forcing another ship to swerve out of the way at the last minute. Jackson was barely on board before Pen took off again. Where's Lowry's ship? Jackson panted, searching the screen over Pen's shoulder. It got lost somewhere in the mess I made of the queue. She manoeuvred them through the maze of ships with precise, angry jerks on the controls. I can't believe I did that. The Xyb'lor are going to kill us. The Xyb'lor are not going to kill us for cutting in line, Jackson said. There's probably just some fine they want us to pay. And we'll pay it? Pen asked hopefully. Of course not. Ugh, fine, Pen said. She swung wide around the last pair of ships between them and the gate. Where to? Somewhere Lowry won't think to look for us. Because that worked well so far. Just get us out of here. Pen did. There was that awful familiar feeling, like someone was trying to wring Jackson out like a wet towel. And then the screen was filled by a planet, its jewel-bright greens and blues jarring after the austere metal of the Xyb'lor station. Where are we? Jackson asked. Faria, Pen said. It's a new settlement, committed to self-sufficiency and living as one with the native flora and sub-sentient fauna. Nothing worth stealing unless you wanted to fill the hold with wool or joppa wheat. Gross, Jackson said. He examined the circuit sculpture for damage, then carefully stowed it in a locker. I can't believe I had to leave the Constellation Sphere. What a waste. We'll still get the courier fee, Pen said pointedly. The Constellation Sphere shouldn't have been ours to resell anyway. The courier fee will barely cover fuel costs, Jackson said, and if they weren't willing to overpay, then they should have hacked the latest auction prices. Pen made a disapproving sound, which Jackson ignored. Penn, to their great and mutual frustration, possessed a set of morals that precluded nearly all the ways that Jackson preferred to earn money. She rationalized her role in those earnings by merely piloting Jackson's ship to and from various jobs and never actually participating herself. Then stayed up late writing vague and guilt-ridden letters to her mother. Jackson told his mother that he ferried literal nuts and bolts from factories to shipyards and slept just fine at night. "Let's cool it here for a couple hours," Jackson said, "then head to—" He stopped, and they both stared in horror at the garishly striped green and pink ship that had just come through the gate. "How did Lowry know we were here?" Jackson asked. "The same way he presumably found us in the Xyb'lor Principality," Penn said. Her hands hovered tensely over the controls. "Shit, do you think he hacked the gate?" Jackson asked. "Those things are supposed to be unbreakable. Did they bribe somebody? Could we bribe somebody? Could we get manifests? Because that would—" "Jackson, focus," Penn said sharply. "What do I do?" "Right," Jackson said. "Open communications, I guess." Penn typed in a command. The ship gave a morose trio of beeps. "What does that mean?" Jackson asked. "It means he doesn't want to talk to us," Penn said. "I wonder why." "The ring was just sitting there on his desk," Jackson protested. "It would have been insulting not to steal it. How was I supposed to know it was sentimental?" "Oh shit, move, Penn!" They were speeding away from the gate before Jackson had finished speaking. Bright orange lines streaked across the edge of the screen. "Is he shooting at us? Penn, I think he's shooting at us." "Yes, I noticed," Penn said tightly. "You might want to strap in." Jackson scrambled for the co-pilot's chair. Whatever moral objections Penn might have to Jackson's work, it had given her extensive experience in dodging hostile fire. But they were smaller and unarmed, with nowhere to go except a pacifist planet that seemed unlikely to intervene. "Can you get us back through the gate?" Jackson asked. "I can try," Penn said, and gunned the ship in the opposite direction. "Penn, this is the wrong way," Jackson said. "I know." "Penn, we're heading towards the planet. Very fast." "I know." "But this ship isn't intended for atmospheric re-entry." "Do I tell you how to do your job?" Penn snapped. "All the damn time! And does it ever help?" "No! So stop backseat piloting." "Fine, fine." Jackson bit his cheek hard enough to taste blood, but he didn't shout as Penn brought them in at an angle that would send them spiraling into the planet's gravity. At the last moment, she yanked on the controls and the ship curved upwards, bouncing off Faria's upper atmosphere like a stone skipping across a lake. Jackson's stomach followed the trajectory a half-second later. Penn kept them on the curve until they were soaring back towards the gate, which was when the second ship came through. Unlike Lowry's ship, this one was grey and sleek, its surface bulging with what Jackson knew to be some of the most sophisticated weaponry in the galaxy. "Oh shit," Jackson said. "They really do care about cutting in line." Penn cursed and dodged out of the way of the Xyb'lor ship, the gate beyond, and, serendipitously, 3 missiles from Lowry's ship. The missiles continued toward the Xyb'lor ship before detonating harmlessly in front of it, blocked by an invisible barrier. The Xyb'lor ship fired off 3 shots of its own. The 3 white streaks closed in on Lowry's ship, mirroring it zigzagging perfectly. Jackson and Penn stared at the screen in shock as Lowry's famously ugly ship gave one last frantic zig and then exploded. The corona of wreckage was still expanding when the console beeped. "That's a comms request," Penn said faintly. "Accept it," Jackson said, equally faintly. A burbling sound came over the ship's speakers. "What the—" "Translator," Jackson said. "Oh, right." Penn flipped a switch. "Requesting permission to come aboard," the ship said. "Do you think they'll shoot us if we say no?" Penn asked. Her hands were white where they gripped the controls. "Let's not find out," Jackson said. The ship rocked gently as the Xyb'lor ship connected to the airlock. A minute later, the door to the bridge irised open to reveal Curator Third-Rank Idiglitz. Its cilia fluttered in agitation, and one tendril held a gleaming metal device with a protuberance at one end. As the Xyb'lor stepped onto the bridge, it extended the device, pointing the protuberance at Penn and Jackson. "I'm sorry, I knew it was wrong to jump the queue," Penn babbled. "Please don't kill me. I promise I'll never cut in line again as long as I live." "It's not Penn's fault," Jackson spoke over her. "I ordered her to cut ahead in line. She's a real rule follower at heart. It gets pretty annoying, actually." Idiglitz waited until both of them trailed off, "One cannot simply keep the change," it sputtered, its cilia flitting about wildly. "That would not be fair or reciprocal. You did not specify which art piece you wanted, so I have brought the Ascension of Innocent R.A. by the artist Hlyn." Diglett gestured pointedly with the protuberant metal shape. Jackson took it. It was heavier than he expected, and warm where Diglett had gripped it. When he looked up again, Diglett was holding out a datapad. "Please input your species-specific unique identifier here." Jackson pressed his thumb to the pad, and it gave a contented beep. Diglett's cilia slowed to a gentle undulation. Tendril and pad retracted back into its body and disappeared. "The Xyb'lor Principality thanks you for your business," Diglett said. "If you choose to return, you will be required to wait an additional 352 galactic standard minutes to land, representing the time you had left before docking and the collective time lost to all ships present when you disrupted the queue." Penn nodded vigorously. "Have a nice galactic standard solar cycle." Diglett departed, and Jackson and Penn let out matching breaths. Penn eyed the door speculatively. "You know, we could use this," she said. "What do you mean?" "Next time we've got somebody after us," Penn said. "All we have to do is go to the Xyb'lor, leave something they owe us behind, and we've got ourselves a personal bodyguard. They probably won't shoot unless they're shot at first, what with their whole fairness and reciprocity thing, but the people you piss off do tend to be trigger-happy." Jackson blinked at her. "The moral lines you draw are fascinating." "What?" Penn said with a shrug. "We'd be following the rules." "No," Jackson said firmly. "Absolutely not. None of this fairness and reciprocity business. From now on, we only work with people whose actions make sense. If they don't lie, cheat, and steal, I don't want anything to do with them." "You mean people like Lowry?" "For the last time, I didn't know the ring was a gift from his grandmother," Jackson said. "Now let's hand off the circuit sculpture and then I'll find us a new job." "Can it not involve stealing for a change?" Penn asked. "Sure," Jackson said. He waited just long enough for Penn's expression to turn hopeful. "We haven't done any smuggling for a while." Penn gave a resigned sigh. "Fine. Just try to pick a job that won't end with us being shot at." She headed towards the door. "I'll be in my bunk." "No promises," Jackson called after her. "And tell your mother thank you for the cookies she sent." Penn made an obscene gesture over her shoulder and disappeared through the door. Jackson set the Ascension of Innocent R.A. by the artist Hlyn on the console and sat down to consider their options. Most of his contacts were on the sort of space stations where both the government and various criminal gangs would, to Penn's sure dismay, be eager to take shots at a new smuggler. At the other extreme was the planet Lith, where the worst possible consequence of getting caught smuggling was a fine, and the whole enterprise was factored into the government's economic projections down to the bribes paid to customs officers. It was the sort of standardized and rules-based system that Penn would adore if she were willing to tilt her moral compass just a handful of degrees. Jackson had never been interested because the low risk meant less profit and even less excitement. Except... He opened the internal comms channel. "Hey, Penn." "Yes, Jackson?" "Thank you for breaking the rules to come get me," he said. He waited for a familiar jab about Jackson's just barely tolerable company and the difficult job market for pilots. "Your life is more important than the rules," Penn said. "Oh," said Jackson. "But maybe don't make me prove it again, at least for a bit," Penn added. She closed the channel before Jackson could reply. "Ugh," Jackson said to the empty room. "Lith it is. The work would be boring and the profits dismal. But some things were more important."
The only thing I love more than space stories is cheery, near-victimless heist stories, so you should know this is basically cake for me. I love how Mizman has used the tone and the pace of the heist in everything from language to length, ideas to motif. This is a story that comes in fast, light on its feet, talks its way into and out of, and into and out of trouble and finally hits the good luck it's been frantically digging for. Han Solo would nod approvingly. So would the staff of Leverage International, the Slingers, and Nathan Drake. Any job you get out ahead of is a good job, even if you only got there in the first place, because your point man has an impulse control problem, insofar as he doesn't have any. And should. That good-natured, frantic combination of charm and improv is always a good time. And it also puts us in a really interesting ethical space here. Mizman has done something very tricky and given us a story that feels like the second stage of the character's evolution, without compromising on either the setup or the wrap-up. Jackson and Penn are lying to themselves that it's all about the money, but they're professional liars, so they've successfully conned themselves and bought into their own hype. When that fades, and it will, when they realise what they really love is the puzzle and the rush of solving it, that's going to put them in a really, really interesting spot. Because when you're this good at this kind of work, well, over to Jeff Winger from Community. I discovered at a very early age that if I talk long enough, I can make anything right or wrong. So, either I'm God, or truth is relative. Either way, booyah. That's where they are for me, especially Penn, who is clearly way more up for the doing crimes part of her job than she quite accepts. When they realise that, they will also realise they can target people whose downfall will do everyone some good. And get them paid, of course, but mostly the first one. I'd really like to read that too, but if it never appears, well, that's just proof that Jackson and Penn got away flawlessly this time, isn't it? Brilliantly done, enormous fun, and massive props to Isaac Harwood for nailing the tone on the voices. Great work, everybody, and thank you. As is always the case, we rely on you to pay our authors, our narrators, and our crew, and to cover our server costs and every other cost. We are entirely donation funded, and in 2023 that changed in some very exciting ways when we became a registered US non-profit. We ran a great end-of-year campaign then to raise awareness about all the new ways you can help us out, including the fact that if you pay taxes in the US, you actually might be able to claim a deduction if you donate to us as well. Check out the short metacast on escapeartists.net for more ideas and how to get in touch if you can think of something else that's more meaningful to you. One-time donations are great. We love them. They are so gratefully received. But we have to say what really makes a difference is subscribing. Subscriptions get us stability and a reliable income we use to bring free and accessible audio fiction to the world. You can subscribe for a monthly or annual donation through PayPal or Patreon, and when you do, not only do you help us out immensely, but you also get a bunch of extra bonus audio. You help us, we help you, and everything becomes just a little easier. Even if you can't donate financially, we would humbly like to ask that you donate a little time. Please, if you listen to a story and you really like it, tell people about it. Spread the word. If you liked an episode, then please share it on social media, or blog about it, or leave a review. It really does all help, and thank you once again from all of us. Join us next week for a foundational model for talking to girls by Brian Hugenbuch, read by Kyle Akers with Valerie on host duties and Summer producing. Then, as now, it will be a production of the Escape Artists Foundation and distributed under the Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives 4.0 International License, and we leave you this week with the wise words of the Egyptian god of frustration and, I have no doubt, Jackson's favourite cartoon character. It's not the principle of the thing, it's the money. We'll see you next week, folks. Until then, have fun.